Most people believe a spiritual awakening is light, comfort, and revelation. But the truth is far more raw. A real awakening doesn't arrive gently. It dismantles you. It strips away illusions you spent a lifetime protecting. It exposes the wounds you tried to outrun. It forces you to face what you've buried beneath distraction, ego, and survival. And this is why 90% of people never truly survive it. Not because it destroys them, but because they retreat back into the familiar before transformation can take root. Awakening begins when life can no longer continue as it has. Something inside you breaks, not from weakness, but from the pressure of staying small. The beliefs, identities, and roles you once depended on become too tight, like a skin you've outgrown. You feel lost, confused, unanchored. Everything once stable dissolves. But this dissolution is not punishment, it is purification. Most people misinterpret this emptiness as failure, so they return to the old life they prayed to escape. They numb the discomfort. They silence the inner voice. They choose familiarity over evolution. But the few who continue walking, even when the path is dark, even when they are trembling, these are the ones who awaken for real. Awakening demands honesty. It asks, who are you beneath everything the world taught you to be? And the answer requires courage, because you must confront your shadow, the anger, the fear, the envy, the trauma, the masks you've worn to be accepted. You must witness the parts of yourself that were never allowed to exist. This confrontation is not gentle. It will break your heart open. It will unmake who you thought you were. But if you can stay, if you can breathe through the unraveling, you will discover a strength you never knew was yours. You will meet your real self, not the self shaped by expectations, but the self shaped by truth. Surviving a spiritual awakening does not mean escaping the chaos. It means allowing the chaos to transform you. It means surrendering to the collapse so you can rise with clarity. It means trusting the dismantling, even when you cannot see what will replace it. A true awakening gives you new eyes. It gives you discernment. It gives you boundaries. It gives you the ability to walk away from what once controlled you. It gives you a life that finally matches your soul. But none of this is possible until the old version of you dies. The destruction is not the end. It is the doorway. And only those who dare to walk through it, alone, afraid, and honest, will experience the rebirth waiting on the other side. A spiritual awakening begins with a profound sense of dissolution, a feeling that everything you once relied on is slipping through your fingers. It is not a gentle awakening of curiosity or inspiration. It is a seismic shift that shakes the very foundation of who you believe yourself to be. The routines, the identities, the roles you have played for years, whether consciously or unconsciously, begin to feel hollow, insufficient, and constricting. What once brought comfort now feels like a cage, and every familiar pattern, every relationship, every belief you held dear begins to lose its solidity. The life you thought you had mastered suddenly feels foreign, and you are confronted with a sense of unmooring that is both terrifying and necessary. This dissolution is not chaos without purpose. It is the careful unmaking of what is no longer aligned with your true self. In this stage, reality feels unstable because your internal map has been rewritten. The security you sought in external validation, achievements, or social approval is stripped away, leaving you to face the rawness of your own consciousness. You may feel lost, as if the ground beneath you is constantly shifting, and the person you thought you were no longer exists. This disorientation is an essential part of the process, because it forces you to confront the illusions you have built around your life, the masks you wear, and the compromises you have made to survive or be accepted. In this vulnerability, the soul begins to speak, revealing truths that have long been ignored or suppressed. The dissolution extends to your relationships and attachments too. People who once seemed indispensable may no longer resonate with your evolving consciousness. Material possessions, ambitions, and social roles that you equated with identity may lose their meaning. You may find yourself questioning the very purpose of your existence, and the discomfort of these questions is unavoidable. But within this emptiness lies the potential for profound transformation. By allowing yourself to feel the collapse fully, without resistance, you begin to create space for something authentic and aligned with your inner truth. The breaking down of old structures is a necessary precursor to the emergence of a new way of being, one that is not dictated by external expectations, but by the essence of who you are beneath the layers of conditioning. This stage demands patience and courage, because the mind naturally resists uncertainty and loss. It is a period of unmaking, a stripping away of superficial identities, and an initiation into a deeper understanding of yourself. The dissolution may feel unbearable at times, yet it is the very gateway to the clarity and freedom that awakening ultimately brings. When a spiritual awakening begins, the intensity of the experience can be overwhelming. The collapse of familiar structures, the confrontation with hidden truths, and the exposure of one's deepest fears create a pressure that few are prepared to withstand. For many, the natural response to this discomfort is retreat. Retreating is not an act of weakness, but a survival mechanism. The mind and ego instinctively seek comfort, familiarity, and safety. The unfamiliar terrain of awakening, its uncertainty, its chaos, its demand for self-honesty, feels threatening. It challenges the identity that has been carefully constructed over a lifetime, and the temptation to return to old routines, old relationships, and old patterns becomes almost irresistible. People retreat because they fear the unknown. The inner journey asks questions that cannot be ignored. Who am I without my roles, my labels, my achievements? What remains when the illusions fall away? These questions stir anxiety, loneliness, and sometimes despair. The weight of these emotions can feel unbearable, and the easy path is to seek solace in the familiar. They return to comfort, to the predictable cycles that provide temporary relief, even if those cycles no longer serve their growth. Comfort, in this sense, is deceptive. It offers safety at the cost of authenticity, distraction at the cost of awareness, and stability at the cost of transformation. Retreating also happens because the awakening process demands relentless honesty. It shines a light on the parts of the self that have been ignored, denied, or repressed. Facing these aspects, anger, shame, grief, fear, requires courage. Most are not ready to witness themselves so clearly. The mind prefers to numb the discomfort with distractions, work, entertainment, social approval, or addictive habits. The pull of the old life is strong because it represents control, familiarity, and predictability, even though it keeps one trapped in illusion. This retreat is a natural stage of awakening, but it is also a critical juncture. Those who turn back may feel relief initially, but they also experience a subtle emptiness, a sense that something essential has been abandoned. The company thought they return to is temporary, and the unaddressed inner truths continue to press against the surface. Only those who resist the urge to retreat, who sit with the discomfort, who confront themselves honestly, will continue the path of awakening. The retreat into comfort may be common, but it is also a divergence from the path of true transformation, a delay in the emergence of one's full consciousness. The choice to stay or retreat is made repeatedly, moment by moment, and it is in these decisions that the awakening either deepens or fades. Those who remain present, even amid fear and uncertainty, discover the profound resilience and clarity that lie beyond the temptation of comfort. A spiritual awakening is not merely a journey toward light, it is also a descent into the shadow. The shadow is the part of ourselves we deny, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. The anger we hide, the fears we avoid, the desires we reject, and the patterns we justify. Awakening forces us to confront these aspects because they are the very parts of us that have shaped our life in unconscious ways. Until we face them, true transformation remains impossible. The process is uncomfortable because it demands brutal honesty, the kind that strips away rationalizations and exposes the raw truth of who we are. It challenges the stories we tell ourselves about morality, virtue, and identity, revealing the contradictions and unresolved wounds we have long ignored. The shadow often appears as resistance, discomfort, or recurring patterns in life that feel like external obstacles, but are actually reflections of inner truth. Relationships that trigger intense reactions, fears that seem irrational, or compulsions that defy reason. All these are echoes of the shadow calling for recognition. Awakening does not allow us to bypass these experiences. It places them directly in our path, insisting that we feel and integrate. The shadow is uncomfortable because it confronts us with aspects of ourselves that society taught us to reject and that our ego wants to hide. It may reveal the parts of ourselves capable of cruelty, selfishness, or betrayal, but these revelations are not meant to condemn. They are meant to illuminate and heal. Facing the shadow is also a confrontation with personal responsibility. It requires us to stop blaming others or circumstances for the pain, fear, or failure in our lives. Awakening strips away excuses, showing us how our unresolved wounds and denied parts influence our choices, reactions, and relationships. In this confrontation, we are forced to accept the entirety of ourselves, the beautiful and the ugly, the noble and the shameful. Integration comes not by judgment, but by recognition, compassion, and willingness to transform what has been repressed into conscious power. This stage of awakening is essential because until the shadow is faced, we continue to operate from incomplete awareness. Our decisions are influenced by hidden fears, insecurities, and unacknowledged desires. The more we resist the shadow, the more it controls us from beneath the surface. True liberation, clarity, and authenticity emerge only when we are willing to meet ourselves fully, including the aspects we once feared. Awakening is, therefore, a courageous journey inward, where the confrontation with the shadow becomes the gateway to wholeness, self-mastery, and the freedom to live a life aligned with our deepest truth. In the midst of a spiritual awakening, emptiness often arrives unannounced, leaving a sense of void that can feel terrifying. It is the absence of familiar anchors, the sudden silence where once there was noise, the space where meaning seemed to dissolve. Many interpret this emptiness as failure, loss, or abandonment, yet it is neither punishment nor accident. It is a necessary purification, a clearing of the inner landscape that allows the soul to shed what no longer serves its evolution. Just as a forest fire clears the old growth to make way for new life, the emptiness strips away accumulated illusions, attachments, and distractions, creating the space necessary for authentic transformation. The experience of emptiness forces one to confront the layers of conditioning, beliefs, and expectations that have obscured the essence of the self. The roles we play, the identities we cling to, and the external validations we seek are all revealed as temporary and superficial. In this void, we are left with nothing but our own presence, our raw consciousness, and the unfiltered truth of who we are beneath the masks. This confrontation can feel unsettling because the ego resists surrender and craves control, yet it is precisely this surrender that allows purification to occur. Emptiness is a mirror showing us the aspects of ourselves that have been hidden or denied. It exposes dependency, attachment, and the illusions of permanence, challenging us to release them rather than cling. Purification through emptiness is not passive. It demands presence, awareness, and courage. It requires the willingness to sit in discomfort without distraction, to face the uncertainty without fleeing. In this state, the mind often resists, attempting to fill the void with thoughts, worries, or distractions, but the emptiness persists, persistent and purposeful. It is a signal that old patterns, beliefs, and energies must be relinquished before new clarity can emerge. The void is not a void in the sense of absence, but a fertile space where insight, creativity, and alignment can take root. Ultimately, emptiness prepares the soul for renewal. By allowing the old self to dissolve, by facing the discomfort of being stripped bare, one gains clarity, discernment, and freedom. The purification is invisible at first, but over time it manifests as a quiet strength, a deepened awareness, and the ability to live with intention rather than compulsion. The emptiness becomes the vessel for rebirth, the foundation upon which a conscious, authentic life can be built. In the stillness of nothingness, the awakening finds its purest expression, revealing that what appeared to be loss was, in truth, the most essential form of preparation for transformation. A true spiritual transformation is not achieved through comfort, control, or certainty. it demands both courage and surrender. The path of awakening calls for a willingness to step into the unknown, to move beyond the familiar patterns that have defined existence for years. Courage is required to face the inner truths that have been hidden or ignored, to confront fears, insecurities, and unresolved wounds without turning away. It is the bravery to look honestly at oneself, to witness the shadow, and to accept responsibility for the choices, habits, and beliefs that have shaped life until now. Without this courage, the journey remains superficial, a mere intellectual understanding rather than a lived transformation. Surrender accompanies courage, yet it is often misunderstood. Surrender is not weakness or resignation. It is the conscious letting go of control and the willingness to allow life to unfold beyond the constraints of the ego. It is the recognition that clinging to old identities, expectations, or security inhibits growth and blocks the emergence of the authentic self. To surrender is to trust the process, even when it feels disorienting, uncomfortable, or frightening. It is to accept that the collapse of old structures, the loss, the emptiness, the dismantling of familiar patterns is necessary for rebirth. The combination of courage and surrender creates a dynamic tension. Courage faces the darkness, while surrender allows the transformation to move through without resistance. Transformation also requires endurance. The process is rarely linear or gentle. It may involve periods of confusion, doubt, or emotional turbulence. Courage sustains the commitment to continue despite fear, while surrender prevents the mind from attempting to prematurely fix, control, or escape the process. Together, they allow the individual to navigate the chaos of awakening with presence and clarity. The more one resists, the more intense the inner pressure becomes, but embracing courage and surrender opens a channel for profound inner alignment. Through this dual commitment, old patterns fall away and a new way of being emerges. Courage gives the strength to face the unknown, to confront inner shadows, and to release attachments that no longer serve growth. Surrender provides the space for insight, wisdom, and authentic transformation to arise. In the interplay of these forces, the individual discovers that true power does not come from control or certainty, but from the willingness to be vulnerable, to be honest, and to trust in the process of unmaking and remaking the self. This is the essence of transformation, a courageous surrender that leads to freedom, clarity, and alignment with the deepest truth of one's being. A true spiritual awakening does not end with disorientation, emptiness, or confrontation with the shadow. It culminates in a profound sense of rebirth and alignment. After the dismantling of old structures, beliefs, and identities, the individual emerges transformed, carrying a clarity and authenticity that was previously obscured. This rebirth is not merely symbolic. It is a tangible shift in consciousness, a reconfiguration of the way one perceives oneself, others, and the world. It is the integration of lessons learned during upheaval, the synthesis of light and shadow, and the emergence of a self that operates from truth rather than illusion. In this stage, the soul begins to express itself freely, unencumbered by the fears, doubts, and conditioning that once dictated choices. Alignment follows naturally from this rebirth. When the old layers fall away, the inner being is revealed, and life begins to resonate with purpose and authenticity. Decisions are no longer driven by external validation or societal expectations, but by an inner compass that reflects the deepest values and desires. Relationships, work, and creative expression start to flow in ways that are consistent with the awakened self. Boundaries become natural, not imposed, and there is a heightened discernment about what nourishes the soul versus what drains it. The alignment is holistic, encompassing emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions, allowing one to live with coherence and integrity. Rebirth and alignment also bring a sense of empowerment that differs from ego-driven confidence. It is a quiet, steady strength rooted in self-awareness, resilience, and presence. Life no longer feels like a series of reactive patterns. Instead, it becomes a conscious unfolding in which each moment is engaged with intention and clarity. The awakening teaches that true power lies not in control over circumstances, but in mastery over the self, in the ability to respond rather than react, to create from authenticity rather than from fear. The process of rebirth is continuous. It does not mark the end of growth, but rather the beginning of a higher stage of evolution. As awareness deepens, alignment becomes more refined, and the individual navigates life with an increased capacity for compassion, clarity, and creativity. The lessons of the awakening, confronting the shadow, embracing emptiness, surrendering to the process, become integrate into daily living, forming the foundation for a life that is not merely survived, but fully lived. In this state, the individual discovers the profound truth that awakening is not an event, but a transformative journey, one that reshapes the soul and allows it to operate in harmony with its highest potential, bringing a sense of purpose, freedom, and profound inner peace. And so, the journey of spiritual awakening is not for the faint of heart, nor for those who seek comfort above truth. It challenges, it breaks, it strips away everything familiar, but in that unmaking lies the greatest gift. For those who endure, who face the shadows, who embrace emptiness, and who surrender to the flow of transformation, there awaits a rebirth unlike anything the world can offer. You will emerge aligned, whole, and unshakable, no longer living by the expectations of others, but guided by the deep, unwavering truth of your own soul. Remember, awakening is not a destination, it is a continuous unfolding, a courageous dance with the unknown, and a profound invitation to live fully, authentically, and powerfully. Step through the fire, trust the process, and know that on the other side of dismantling lies the freedom and clarity your spirit has always sought.